I'm Andrea Isabel Lucas, founder of Bar and Soul and author of Own It All. The Own It All podcast is all about how to stop waiting for change and start creating it because your life belongs to you. Every week, I interview inspiring women and they share their tips about how to own it all in the various areas of your life, like career, time management, health, style, and relationships. Tune in every week so they can share their advice with you. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review in your favorite listening app. Hi, this is Andrea Isabel Lucas, and this is the Own It All podcast. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to my friend Tabitha St. Jacobs. She's a zero-waste fashion designer. She's the youth director of Women's March and coordinator of the Empower Coalition. She is a great example of a woman who's building her legacy by speaking up and taking actions consistent with her deepest held values. Tabitha, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrea.
Thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit? There's so many interesting things in your bio. What does it mean to be a zero waste fashion designer?
I'll start from way back when I was about 25, I had a bit of a quarter life crisis. I had been working a regular 9-to-5 job, and I realized that I really wanted to pursue something that it was a bit more artistic. So I landed on fashion, and I went to school for fashion, and then I started sort of experimenting within the fashion world, and I worked for a big fashion brand, and I started realizing how much waste there is in the fashion industry. So I left my job and I just started delving into any information that I can find about waste in the industry. And I decided that I wanted to create a line that would actually help solve that problem. So I launched my first line, Tabithas, in 2012. And the goal of it was to create fashion without creating waste. So I did it in a couple different ways. I did it through the process of making the clothing. So I kept everything pretty small. I worked with one factory in Brooklyn that I know had the same values as I do. And I also tried to be zero waste in the way in which I made the patterns for the clothing. So I would try to cut off as little fabric as possible. And then the little bit of fabric that was cut off, I would use it to make different things like stuffed animals or pocket squares I did one year. So I tried to get really creative with the stuff that I was making with the waste. But that's how my line became zero waste pretty much.
Wow, that's so cool. And then how did you go from being a fashion designer to youth director of Women's March?
So I transitioned because of fashion back in 2016, right after the presidential elections. Like so many other people, I was just feeling so despondent and discouraged. And I was on Facebook and I saw that one of my friends had started a march that she was saying we women should march on Washington the day after the inauguration. And I reached out to her, and she's a friend of mine from fashion. And I reached out to her to help. And she was like, sure. I think at that point in time, it was becoming overwhelming for her. And pretty much anybody that wanted to help, she was like, sure, we need all the help we can get. So I joined the team that was organizing the Women's March pretty early on. And I noticed very early on that there was a gap in terms of youth voices. And I knew that one thing that I was pretty sure about was that we couldn't be having conversations about the future of our country, the future of this world, without including the voices of people that would be leading the future. So I started the youth program with a couple other people at Women's March, and it's grown so much since then. It's been really amazing to see how far we've come. We have a 2019 cohort, which is a group of about 14 really exemplary young activists between the ages of 14 and 25. They are sort of like the youth voice of Women's March. And we try to have the youth part of things be as youth-led as possible. So they come up with different things that they want to do, different initiatives that they want to do, and we provide the support for them to make that happen. This weekend, we're actually getting ready to go on our first youth retreat, which we're super excited about. And we are just growing and building with them. And we've really come a long way. We've done some really amazing things in the last couple of years. We organized a national school walkout last year on March 14th to protest gun violence. And we saw 1.6 million students walk out of schools. And that made history as the largest single day protest with the largest number of individual locations in the history of this country. I mean, it was more individual locations than all of the women's marches, than all of the other protests. So we're immensely proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish, and we keep growing and building. And the young people that I work with are so incredibly inspiring. They keep me going. They sort of it gets pretty despondent sometimes, the news cycle. It can get pretty depressing, and it just makes you think sometimes like that all the work that you're doing is sometimes pointless because there's always something in the news. But then I look to them and I work with them, and they really keep me inspired.
Yeah, that reminds me of that quote, action is the antidote to despair.
Yeah, definitely.
And what is the Empower Coalition?
So the Empower Coalition is a group of 140 large organizations and smaller youth groups that have come together with the goal of empowering the youth movement in this country. And I formed the Empower Coalition last year with a couple other people, and it's grown since then. We've been very fortunate. We had last year, the coalition was very instrumental in terms of getting young people out to vote for the 2018 elections, and just providing resources and skills and guidance for young people in terms of becoming stronger activists. After the Parkland shooting, we saw so many young people who had never done any type of organizing before. They were activated, they were passionate, they were like, this is not the country I want to live in. And they wanted to make a difference. And they started youth groups, they started organizations and so forth. So we've been lucky to see larger organizations who have been doing this work for like decades sometimes, who are part of the coalition, lend their support, lend their voices to these smaller youth groups and provide guidance for them in terms of becoming stronger and like learning the skills they need to be impactful. So it's been a great experience in terms of organizing the coalition. And I'm really excited to see where it continues to go and grow over the next couple of years.
Wow. So it sounds like you really have a passion for working with youth.
I do. And it's something that I discovered sort of like later on in life. I always knew I had a really rough teen year period when I was younger. I always felt like nobody understood me. I was going through a lot. I was depressed. I was experiencing a lot of anxiety. So when I was younger, I always kind of knew that I wanted to work with young people. I wanted to like reach out and be a source of like support and guidance for young people who may be going through the same thing. So it kind of has come kind of full circle for me, that I'm able to work with young people now and help guide them and help be that source of like support for them in the work that they're doing.
And you moved here from Trinidad when you were 19.
Yeah, I moved here when I was 19. I was in Trinidad. I had just graduated from high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I kind of like didn't have a concept of like, or anything like that. I just knew that I wanted to do more with my life. And my sister had gotten into college in Brooklyn, and she's the one who really inspired me to like go to college. I had never like known what this college thing was before. And it was really because of her that I got interested in like furthering my education. And I ended up going to the same school that she was going to, St. Francis College in Brooklyn Heights. And during my time at St. Francis is where I really discovered a lot about myself. I started organizing a whole lot more. I formed different clubs within the school. We won awards within the school. I did a couple art exhibits. I sold my art for the first time. So my time at St. Francis was really a very precious time for me, because it's when I really came into my own as an adult, I think.
And when you say you started organizing there, were you doing activism work even then?
Yeah, I was doing more organizing work than activism work. I sort of was always somebody that would see gaps and would try to find ways to fill it. Even in high school, I was going to one of the sort of like top high schools in the country, and at age, I think 17, you can choose to either continue going to your same high school, or you can choose to go to another high school. And I chose to go to one of the worst high schools in the country. I just wanted a different experience. I think I wanted to have more of a say over my education, and I felt that the previous school I had been going to didn't really resonate with me. So I switched schools to this other school that was really under-resourced. People had given up on the school, given up on the students, and we really discovered our voices while we were at that school. And we started like a school newspaper. We organized a pageant, and it was really exciting to see other students get excited about going to that school, even though the entire country was against them and were like looking down on them. So that's where my organizing work really started, was at that high school. And then I sort of took it over when I went to St. Francis College, and I noticed that there were no structured programs for artists. So I started the fine arts group at St. Francis College, and we started having art exhibits. We started doing fundraisers and so forth. We started having painting nights where people who felt that they wanted to express themselves in an artistic way can have a place and a space to go to really do that. So I've always sort of like looked at where there are gaps in terms of serving people and tried to fill those gaps.
Wow. So it sounds like this started to grow in you at sort of the end of your high school years, but in college, you really cultivated your leadership abilities and your drive to serve.
Yeah, I think college was really instrumental for me. It was the first time also that, I mean, back in high school, I got a lot of support from like the principals and so forth, but it was only when I went to college that I was able to get a budget for the work that I was doing. And I was able to be like, okay, there's actually, I don't have to make mountains out of like nothing. I can actually have a budget and like provide actual things for people that they might be able to do really incredible things with. So college was when I mean, my time at St. Francis College, the professors and the administration were so supportive of the work that I was doing. And I came up with so many ideas and they were just supportive. They were like, let's make it happen. Let's do this. You want to have a poetry reading? Let's do this. You want to have an art exhibit? Let's do this. So that was really when I felt what it was like to get support from those in sort of authority figures.
Was there ever a moment in your journey where you thought, because I think a lot of people struggle with self-doubt and they think they have to wait to get started until they feel more confident or more qualified. Did you ever have a moment where you thought, I'm not qualified. Who am I to do this or to be a leader?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when I started my first fashion line in 2012, I had worked for a large fashion brand before, but when you work for a large fashion brand, you sort of have your little pocket of work that you focus on. You don't get the full idea of how to run an entire company when you're working for a large brand. So I didn't really know how to run a fashion brand. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know everything about every step of the entire production cycle of making clothing. So there were definitely moments where I was like, what am I doing? I have no idea how to do so many things. Like, is this a crazy idea? Should I even be doing this? And I just kept going because I knew that it needed to be done. I knew that the message that I had in terms of making clothing without making waste was something that needed to be put out there. I knew that in terms of the way that the fashion industry was going with the waste that we are producing and putting into this world, that it needs to stop and there needs to be a voice. There needs to be multiple voices out there that are pushing back against it. So I knew that that my voice was needed in that moment, and it's still very much needed. So that's what kind of kept me going. But there are definitely moments even now where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, should I be doing, like, maybe I should be doing this different way, or maybe I should be tweaking what I'm doing. And I'm also always open to changing and developing into like many different areas. I launched another brand, Lavari, in 2017. We had an amazing show. 900 people showed up to our first show. We had a full collection. And then we realized that we wanted to focus on a different type of fashion. So then we started working on collaborations with other more established lines. And we brought out like a straw sleeve. We brought out a shoe. We also brought out a handbag. So I think that I've always been open and willing to pivot where the need is. So that's really important to me as well, to also know like, okay, this path that I'm on may not be the best path that I should be on right now, and it's time to pivot and to try something else.
That sounds like really good advice. It sounds like you're kind of like, hey, I'm always growing and improving, but I'm going to still keep showing up as I am today. And it sounds like one of the things that keeps you going in those moments of self-doubt is really being of service. And it reminds me, I had last year, I was speaking on a panel and it was supposed to be the biggest audience that I had ever spoken in front of. And I was really nervous about it, like full body, cold sweats, and I remember telling a friend that I just was completely freaking out. And she said to me, look, when you get up there, it's not about you. It's about you being a channel to give everyone in that audience like serve them to the best of your ability and try to just give them like the best that you can offer them. And that was so helpful. It really took the pressure off.
Yeah, that's a really accurate way to put it. And I think that it helps sort of pivot the attention away from ourselves, especially when you're doing something in front of a large audience. It's easy to be like, okay, this is about me, but it actually isn't. It's about the message that we have to share with people, and it's about making a difference in their lives so that they can take this message that we have and learn and grow from it.
Very well said. So I think most of us, if not all of us, want our lives to make a difference. And some people may feel like they don't know how or what to do. Maybe they feel kind of aimless, like I just don't know what my purpose is. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for someone who feels confused or aimless in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to really just be open and to start small. I think the biggest thing is that we tend to be, I mean, I can speak for myself. Like sometimes I have very clear-cut ideas about what I want out of my life, especially in the past when I was growing up. I was like, this is what I want by this age. This is what I have to accomplish. And I've learned over time that the thing to do is to really be as open as possible to change and to growth. And I strongly believe that there's a path for our lives, and it's up to us to be as open as possible to being led to that path. So I would say, yeah, start small, start experimenting with the things that you're most passionate about, especially if you're looking to make a difference. Reach out to local organizations that are doing things in like the area of interest that you have and see if they need any help, and just start small and start building from there. It's also important to adjust what we think of as making a difference. And I think that in this era of like celebrity activism, it's very easy to think that if you're not on the news, if you're not in the media, if you're not in the press, that you're not making a difference. But that's absolutely not the case. There are so many people who are working at organizations, who are working every day, 10 to 12 hours a day, doing really impactful work that are making a difference, that aren't the ones in the press, but are still doing really amazing work that is really making change in many people's lives.
That's really great advice. And what I hear you saying is kind of just taking the pressure off, like stop trying to, knock it out of the park and have it be so big and so impressive and so well thought out. Like it's okay to just start somewhere.
It is, definitely.
There's a writer who I follow, and she used the analogy of, I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, but there's that giant ice wall. And she says, like, if we all have our little section of the wall and our little pickaxe, like, and we're just kind of all chipping away at it.
Yeah,
it all adds up.
Exactly. That's precisely true.
Hey, it's Andrea here. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you that my book, Own It All, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. So if you go to ownitallbook.com, you can get my exclusive pre-order bonuses. I'll be sharing with you one mindset shift and some practical tools that will help you get whatever it is that you want in the areas of health, wellness, career, relationships, time management. I've got journaling pages to share with you there and some exclusive audio content. So be sure to pre-order your copy now and get those bonuses, ownitallbook.com. So who are some of your mentors, personal heroes, sheroes, people you admire?
So I think that over time, the most consistent mentor, personal shero in my life has been my sister. She is the reason that I got interested in college and furthering my education. She's been the person who over time, when I said like, I want to study fashion, she was like, awesome, you can do it. And then when I decided to start my fashion line, she was my first partner. And just over time, she's been one of my biggest supporters, and she's always there for me. And I also have an immense amount of respect for her for what she's been able to accomplish within her own life. She's such an incredible mother. She's a business owner. And also the values that she holds as a person. She's not somebody that like gets stressed out. She's huge on like self-care. She goes running, and she does yoga. She goes to the gym. And I always aim to, whatever I do in my life, to prioritize myself and the love that I hold. And it's something that I look to her for, because she manages to do it in such an effortless way. I think that in all that I do, in the job that I have, in the different projects that I work on, the thing that's most important to me at all times is how I am to the people around me that are there for me, like how I am to my husband, how I am to my son. Am I treating them with love, and am I finding time for them? Am I being the type of mother that I want to be? Because when my son grows up, he's not going to be impressed with the job I do. He's going to be impressed with the time that I spend with him. And she really manages to find that balance between being a business owner and still being a mom, being present for the people that she loves. And I look up to her in that way. And she's been my greatest role model over time.
So in your interview that you did for my book, we talked about legacy, and I asked, what does the word legacy mean for you? Is it something you create, something you leave behind for future generations, or how you'll be remembered? And I really loved your response. You said, for me, legacy is very personal. I want my son to be proud to call me his mom. I want him to tell his kids about his mother in a way that makes him happy to have been on this journey with me. My legacy will be in how he remembers me. So when you say personal, do you mean private, or do you mean that your top priority is how you'll be remembered by those who were closest to you?
I think it's more that my top priority is how I will be remembered by those closest to me. I think that I've definitely gone through periods in my life where I was focused solely on my professional life, on accomplishing things. I grew up without a lot. You know, as I mentioned before, I didn't really have an understanding of college. So I didn't really have like big, lofty goals for myself. So when I started to actually achieve things in life, I got really hyper focused on that. And I was working obsessively, and I was going to school at the same time, working on side projects. And I really neglected my personal relationships. And my time with Adam now, my husband, he's really taught me a lot about valuing and really prioritizing the time with the people that you love. And I've seen a change in my life. I've seen a shift in terms of what is most important to me. And I enjoy my life a whole lot more now that I'm prioritizing the people that I love, as opposed to back when I was younger and when I was really prioritizing my career and my work. And for me, my legacy will be in how my son remembers me, because I think that, I hope one day that he will be proud of the work I do, but I think that he has no concept of that right now. He knows that his mom works for Women's March, and he knows what a Women's March is. But what's most important to him right now is the time that I spend with him. It's like, it's really the time that I read stories to him. It's me taking the time to do bath time with him and bedtime with him. And for me, I see myself through his eyes, and he has such an innocence, and he has such a purity. He has such a pure approach to love and to life. And I feel like I'm doing something right in this world if I'm okay with him. So for me, he's really my priority, him and my husband and my loved ones. And it definitely doesn't mean that people who prioritize career, like, that's not the right thing to do. I think that, especially for women, over time, we've been taught that, like, we have to choose, and we've been taught that there's no place for women who want to focus like on their careers and have a family. So I definitely think that there should definitely be a place for that women who want to focus on becoming the best that they can be in terms of their jobs, that's amazing and that's incredible, and we should definitely have that. But for me personally, my own legacy is firmly grounded in my son. And it definitely doesn't mean that when I accomplish things professionally that I don't feel proud of it. And it doesn't mean that I'm not driven at the same time. It just means that in terms of where I want to be remembered, it's firmly grounded with the people that I love and the people that love me.
I really appreciate you saying that, because I think sometimes we have this message of success. Like, we're kind of bombarded with it. And especially now that women are much more interested in their empowerment and, reaching their full potential. And there's more opportunity for that than we had, even one generation or definitely a few generations ago. So there can be a lot of pressure to be driven by career success or professional accomplishments. And I loved what you said. There's nothing wrong with choosing that. Some people may choose, I'm not having a family because I know I want to, work on my career so exclusively. Or some many people like you and me are going to be doing both, right? And having children and having careers. But sometimes for me, I forget that it's okay to have your priorities lie in your personal life versus your professional life, because there can be just so much pressure to fit that mold of professional success.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing as a woman, and this is also advice I give to younger women, is to be in touch with what you really want from your life. I think that there are young women who I know who are like, I don't want to have kids, and I know that about myself, and this is what I want to accomplish with my life, and that's perfectly fine as long as you're being completely honest with yourself that that's what you want to accomplish. I think there's so much pressure from the outside about what we should and shouldn't be doing as women. And as long as you know that this is what I really want from my life, and it's not according to what society's telling me that I should be accomplishing or what my family's telling me that I should be accomplishing, as long as it's really you being in touch with what you really want from your life, I think that's perfectly fine, whatever it is that is. And I've found that at age, I'm like 36 now, and I've sort of like just discovered it in the last couple of years. And I wish that I had been more in touch with what I wanted from my life when I was younger. That's really the advice that I give to younger women, is to like, whatever you want to accomplish in life is perfectly fine. Just make sure it's what you really want for yourself.
And you made you kind of illustrated that point when you were talking about your sister being your shero, and it wasn't because of some big professional accomplishments, which she might have, but the things that you were talking about were just like her being a role model of living her life in balance, or her always being there to support you on your journey.
Yeah. I think it's a kind of, because I live in New York, and I felt in the past a lot of pressure to be like juggling a whole bunch of different things and always on the go and always busy. And she does not live in New York, so she has a much quieter life than I do. So I've always looked to her as an example of somebody who finds balance. And at this stage in my life, I've found a lot more balance, and it's really amazing. It's really gratifying for me to feel this balance in my life. I'm of course always striving for more balance, but I think it's definitely possible to find that balance in your life. It's just about figuring out what works for you as a woman.
You know, when I think about those steps in your journey where you had an idea, you were kind of moving in a new direction, and you said that your sister would just cheer you on and be in your corner and encourage you. And of course, it's so great when we have that. And there's times when we don't have that, right? Like there's times where we aren't given permission from someone external, or we're not offered a seat at the table, and we have to give ourselves permission, or we have to kind of pull up a chair or make our own seat at the table. Can you think of any times in your life where you had to do that?
Yeah, I think that definitely starting a fashion line, entering the sustainable fashion space, was when I had to sort of just be like, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And just like what you said, like pull up a seat at the table. I knew nothing about sustainable fashion when I started. I didn't know anybody in the industry, and I sort of had to create a space for myself and just sort of put myself out there as much as possible and become comfortable with the voice that I knew I had. And there were definitely moments where I felt like there was no space for me within the industry. People doubted what I was doing. I had a mentor at one point. I was a part of a mentorship program, and they were asking me questions. And at that point in time, I didn't have a lot of knowledge about the business side of things. And this one guy who was thinking about becoming my mentor was just like so discouraging. He was like, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you are just not going to make it far. Whoa. So there's definitely been moments where people dismissed me, where people didn't think I was going to accomplish much with my life. And for me, that's always served as like a kind of motivation for me to keep on pushing. It's been an energy that I've had in my life since I was a teenager. I was never the type of young person who had a lot of support growing up. I always had my sister, but in terms of parental support and in terms of other supports, I didn't have a lot of that growing up. So it was kind of like sort of always up to me to keep myself going and to keep pushing myself. So when I started getting that pushback, when I entered the fashion world, for me, it was motivation for me to just know that like I will just prove them wrong, because I know that I have a message that I want to share with people. I know that I have a goal that I want to accomplish, and I'm not going to stop until I reach that goal.
Yeah, it can be very discouraging when people don't believe in what you're doing and you know that you're driven by this passion that you have inside of you, but others don't see that or misunderstand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that for me, the Women's March, this the first one that happened in 2017, I went to DC with some friends, and it was the single most powerful day of my life and the most connected to humanity I've ever felt, and just the most joyous occasion truly of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, that night, just coming back to the place where we were staying in DC, just so elated and just putting music on, and we were dancing and we were seeing these images from around the world. We didn't know all those other marches were happening. So we were just floored by the solidarity that was happening around the world. And it holds such a special place in my heart and obviously in yours.
Mm-hmm.
I know this year there was controversy about the Women's March as an organization, and around, accusations of anti-Semitism. Do you have anything you want to say or comment about that?
I mean, I think that this past year has really been a period of learning and growing for us. This movement, I mean, in 2017, there were 5 million people, women and allies, that came out and marched all over the world. And I think that the movement is not defined by any particular individuals. It's really defined by all the people that stood up on that day and decided to get out in the streets and to make their voices heard. And it's defined by the many women who have run for office since, the many, many, many first-time activists who have become engaged and made their activism consistent and ongoing since then. We've seen so many first-time activists that have now been doing this for two years now. And I think that that's what really defines the movement. As an organization, we've been learning and we've been growing, and it's been a period of really examining our values and really becoming closer to what we stand for. And we have continued to be grateful to the people that have stayed in conversation with us and have supported us in our learning and really have been in this space with us. But I think that this movement is so much bigger than any one organization or any small group of people. And we saw even in 2019, 100,000 people came out in DC and 600,000 people came out all over the country. And in terms of the trajectory of movements, that's still pretty incredible. And it's been great to see women really say, this is about me. This is about what I'm doing within my own communities to make a difference as a woman. So that's really what Women's March is about. And it's been great to see how it's grown over time.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I actually remember reading an article in the local paper here in Boston, and someone was interviewed like, oh, are you still going to go to the Women's March after this controversy, whatever? And one of the women attending just was like, I don't even know who organizes this thing. I'm not here. I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
I'm just here to march for women.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we're talking about 5 million people around the world coming out. You couldn't be more right that it's not about any one person. We're talking about massive solidarity around the planet.
Right.
You posted something on your Instagram that really, really, really spoke to me. I'm just going to read it for our listeners. You said, today I spoke to high schoolers at Grace Church High School about making change. One student asked how I stay positive amidst all the negativity. I told her to find her joy. Find things that make you happy and partake in them often and unapologetically. Laugh often and demand of yourself that you rest and replenish. Don't let anyone steal your joy. Joy is an act of resistance. This has been hard for me lately, but I'm working hard at taking my own advice. Mm-hmm. So beautifully said, and such a great reminder, because I know right now it can feel like, well, there's so many things going wrong in our country, or there's so many things that, I don't feel like I can rest until I've helped my brothers and sisters. And can you just say a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've learned over the years that I wish that we were able to spend more time on as a movement is the importance of self-care. I think that we are our best selves. We we have more to give to the movement when we take care of ourselves and when we prioritize the joy in our lives. I think that when we forget what makes us happy, when we forget to do the things that bring us joy, that's when the other side wins. That's when they really take our joy away. And that's something that I prioritize as I work with young people, is that I try to prioritize self-care and finding their joy as much as possible. They're super eager and super excited. And sometimes I have to be like, we're actually taking the weekend off. We're going to take a break. I want you to go do something fun. I want you to go spend time with your family, with your friends, because I think especially in this current climate for the past couple years, there's things that are happening in the news. There are things that are happening to directly impacted communities all the time. And we're needed to show up and to fight consistently. But it's so important for us to realize when we're burnt out and when we need to take a break and when we need to lean on others to step in for us to really continue that fight. Because if we are pouring from an empty vessel, then we have nothing more to give. And I've seen so many activists burn out. I've actually seen activists lose their lives for this movement. People have heart attacks, people suffer from anxiety, people go to the hospital because of panic attacks. And it's part of what we're doing because we're all in this movement because we're passionate about it, because we want to make this country a better place. So we come at it and we put our whole souls into it. We put our whole selves into it. And if we're not careful, then we neglect ourselves. So it's something that I've really tried to prioritize lately. 2017 actually was a really, really difficult year for me in terms of not prioritizing my own self-care. And it was something that I really focused on doing for 2018. And it made a huge difference in just knowing when I had to take a moment to stop and to take a break and to come back to it. And when you come back to it after you take a break, you're refreshed and you have more energy and you're able to further commit yourself to the cause and to the work ahead. And I think it's so important for us, especially me as I organize young people, to help them develop these skills from as young as possible so that they know that these are skills that I'm going to take for the rest of my life. I'm going to prioritize my self-care and I'm going to make sure that I am connected to joy in my life. I'm not going to let people rob me of my joy. I'm not going to let people that are fighting against the causes that really matter to me, I'm not going to let them steal my joy.
This is such powerful advice. And I am just curious, what are some of the things that you do to take care of yourself and to find your joy?
I meditate. I don't meditate as much as I would like. I would like to make it a daily habit, but now I'm like once every 2 to 3 days. Meditating really grounds me. It really helps me get in touch with myself and to find silence in a lot of noise that I have in my life a lot of the times. I try to eat well. I try to take care of my body. I try to spend time with my family as much as I can. I try to prioritize time with them, which is very healing for me. My son brings me like an immeasurable amount of joy. So just hanging out with him, getting on his level, doing things that he considers fun, like that rejuvenates me and that helps me get the focus I need to do the work that I want to do. But yeah, I think that there are different ways that people can do self-care. Some people do yoga, some people exercise. Like, as I mentioned before, my sister goes running. So there's many different ways and people should just find whatever works for them and do it as often and as unapologetically as you possibly can. Don't be afraid to take time out to take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. It's been such an honor having you on the podcast, and I am just in awe of all the work that you're doing and so grateful for the advice that you shared with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Andrea Isabel Lucas, and this has been the Own It All podcast. Thank you so much for listening this week. If you liked what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite listening app. It really helps, and I would be so grateful. I'll be back next Wednesday with a brand new episode. See you then.